the Grouchy Nerd.
Alright, quiet down, knuckleheads. It's time to take another look at a new hero for Fantasy Flight Games Marvel Champions. This time we're looking at one of the heroes in the Mutant Genesis campaign box, Colossus. Really? Not even the wonder of the world? You just went with a big Ferris wheel? Okay. Pyotr Rasputin was born in the USSR on a collective farm with his siblings. His mutation, the ability to turn his skin into an organic metal, giving him superhuman strength and near indestructibility, began to show itself around the age of 13. He caught the attention of renowned super invader of privacy Charles Xavier when Peter rescued his sister from a runaway tractor. Xavier recruited Peter to help rescue the X-Men from a sentient island. We're into the mutants now. It's gonna get weird again, and it's gonna stay weird for a little while. He stuck around after the mission to become a full-fledged member of the X-Men. Since then, he's lost his memories and become a famous painter, returned to the X-Men, sacrificed himself to cure the legacy virus, a mutant gene-seeking plague, but then came back, became possessed by the power of Juggernaut, and spent a bit of time imbued with the Phoenix Force, an ancient cosmic energy. Also, are we to assume that he's related to Rasputin? Or is that just like Jones or Smith in Russia? Whatever, let's take a look. On his hero side, Colossus does 1 thwart, 2 attack, and 2 defense. He gets 14 hit points and 4 cards in hand. He can have 1 additional tough status card though, and Steel Skin is a response that'll give Colossus a tough when he changes to hero form. 4 cards in hand is meh, but 2 tough status cards that's pretty sweet. Over on his alter ego side, Peter Rasputin gets a recovery of 4, and his hand size goes up by 2 to 6. As a setup step, find a copy of Organic Steel in your deck and add it to your hand. And Aspiring Artist. After you change to this form, shuffle a Colossus card from your discard pile into your deck. That's an alter ego ability that we've seen on several alter egos, and it's a great one. Your hero cards are, generally speaking, going to be more efficient and better than the aspect and basic cards in your deck, so being able to recur those as often as possible is fantastic. Looking out of order to Organic Steel, we get 2 copies of it, though you're only going to be able to search one of them out on that setup step. It's a 2-cost superpower upgrade with 2 steel use counters. As a hero response after a tough status card is discarded from Colossus, exhaust Organic Steel and discard a counter to get that tough status right back on him. This card is great. Colossus is going to be spending those tough status cards as a resource, so being able to get them immediately back after spending them is very, very strong for him. Though it is worth pointing out that ability to find Organic Steel, you can only search your deck. So if you draw both of those copies in your opening hand before you mulligan, you're not going to want to discard both of them, because then you can't get them back. Colossus's signature ally is Shadowcat, as played by Kitty Pryde. She costs 3, has 3 health, 2 thwart, and 2 attack, and like her full-size version, she ignores guard and patrol keywords and the crisis icon. His signature ally is his on-again, off-again girlfriend. Her signature ally is her pet. Peter, I've been there, man. Just walk away. Other than the obvious fear of intimacy, what a great ally for him. His thwart's only starting at a 1. He does have a way to boost it, but it's starting at a 1. So this ally being able to pick off up to 6 and ignore patrol and ignore the crisis icon to go and maintain the main scheme, that's really great. Next is Peter's Studio, a 1-cost location support with an alter ego action. Exhaust Peter's Studio to discard cards from your deck until you discard a Colossus card. Add that card to your hand. So this is another mechanism we've seen in other heroes, and it's one I don't love. Yes, your hero cards are better than the aspect cards, but they're not so much better that I want to trash a bunch of good cards finding one. Not to mention, if you use this a bunch, you're going to be resetting your deck more often and drawing an extra encounter card more often. Next is Iron Will, a 2-cost upgrade with the superpower trait. Colossus gets +1 to his thwart, and as a response, after a tough status is discarded from Colossus, draw 1 card. So this brings you up to 2 thwart, and you're going to draw a card every time you lose a tough status, which, as we're about to see, that's not just when he's taking hits. Titanium Muscles is another 2-cost superpower upgrade. This one gives Colossus +1 to his attack, and you can exhaust it to get 1 physical resource per tough status card on Colossus, which, remember, is up to 2. He's got all kinds of ways to get and maintain tough status cards, so this is almost always going to be worth 1 resource. Sometimes it's going to be worth 2. Sometimes it's going to be worth 0, but sometimes it's going to be worth 2. Plus it's bringing his attack up to 3. Next up is 2 copies of Maid of Rage, a 0-cost event with the superpower trait. As a hero interrupt when you make a basic attack, discard a tough to get +6 to that attack, and it gains overkill. Lose a tough, which is pretty easy to get back. You're going to draw a card off of Iron Will, and then you're going to be doing 6 damage on top of your 3 or maybe even 4 if you've boosted it another way. You're doing 9 or 10 damage? And it's got overkill? Steel Fist is a 2-cost attack event with the superpower trait, and we get 3 copies. As a hero action, deal 5 damage to an enemy, then you may discard a tough to also stun and confuse that enemy. 2 resources for 5 damage is already better than most aspect cards, so the fact that you're going to then drop a tough and a confuse, you're going to get a free activation in either hero or alter ego form, and this is a 2-cost card. Then we get 2 copies of Bulletproof Protector, a 0-cost superpower event. As a hero action, discard a tough status to either get 2 toughs back or ready. I love cards with options. I love cards with options even more when both of those options are great. Lose a tough to get 2 back, and if you have Iron Will out, you're also drawing a card, or you get to ready and maybe use another Maid of Rage. What? Last, we get 2 copies of Armor Up, another 0-cost superpower event. As an alter ego interrupt, when the villain activates, change to hero form. Yeah, slinging tough status cards around is no good if you're not taking hits, and he's not very good at thwarting, so this lets you dip down to alter ego, still do your alter ego-y things like putting a Colossus card back into your ever-thinning deck, and then flip up at the last second and make the villain attack you instead of scheme. And then you can lay down a Perseverance or a Ready to Rumble, both of which were reprinted in this deck. And in other aspects, you got Surprise Attack or Lay Down the Law or Moxie. The bad stuff! Colossus's obligation is Homesick. Peter may exhaust to get rid of it, or you discard this and any and all tough statuses on you, and it gains Surge. He's got a lot of ways to get tough status cards on him and back on him, but going from 2 to 0 always hurts. His signature nemesis is Juggernaut, who does 4 attack but only 1 scheme, but has 8 hit points. He also has Elite and Brute traits, as well as Stalwart and Toughness, so he can't be stunned or confused, and he comes into play with a tough status. Luckily, 8 HP is right around what you can take out with a Maid of Rage, even if you haven't boosted your attack, but just make sure you can get rid of that tough status first. Rampaging Juggernaut is the signature side scheme. It gets only 2 threat per identity, but when it's revealed, you must discard all tough statuses on friendly characters and add 2 threat for each one you discard. And it has the amplify icon, so it adds a boost icon to each boost. Man, that 2 threat really lures you into thinking this is going to be a gentle one, but then it just slaps you in the nose. It's going to clear maybe 2 tough status cards, and if it does, then you're left with a 6 threat side scheme on top of whatever else is going on. Then we get 2 copies of Unstoppable, an attachment. It attaches to the minion with the highest attack that doesn't already have an Unstoppable, and it gains a Surge if no such minion is available. That minion gets +2 to its attack, and the attack gains Piercing and Overkill, but then Unstoppable gets discarded after the attack. And before you go and get that hope up again, Piercing means that you have to, quote, discard any tough status cards before dealing damage, end quote. Also, there was an ellipsis in there that you couldn't hear. So you could be losing 2 toughs and taking a big hit, and if this thing goes on Juggernaut, he's going to be swinging for a 6. Last is 1 copy of Slammed, a nasty-looking treachery. You are stunned. If you're already stunned, take 2 damage. That's very tricky. There's no hit, so tough isn't going to save you here. You're just going to get stunned one way or the other. On to his aspect cards, Colossus came with a protection deck. And up first is fan favorite Nightcrawler, as played by Kurt Wagner. He's a 3-cost ally with 2 health, 2 attack, and 2 thwart, and he has the X-Men trait. As an interrupt, when an X-Men character would take any amount of damage from an enemy attack, spend an energy resource, return Nightcrawler to your hand, and prevent all of that damage. Wow! What an incredible ally. Yes, he only has 2 health, but if you're using him to block or to use his consequential damage, then you're not playing him right. He can just completely wipe out a big hit and come back to your hand. It's not even like he discards. You can just play him again immediately. Bamf indeed, sir. Then we have Polaris by way of Lorna Dane. She's an X-Men ally who costs 3 for 3 health, 2 attack, and 1 thwart. After she enters play, give an X-Men character a tough status. Obviously great for Colossus, who is going to be using those tough status cards as a resource, but also great for any X-Men who just wants a tough status card. I would want a tough status card. You get hit by a bus? Nope, I'm tough. Stub my toe in the night? I don't think so. Tough. 3 copies of Protective Training is next. It's a 1-cost upgrade that attaches to an X-Men ally. That ally gets plus 3 hit points. Max 1 training per ally. So we're going to see one of these in each of the 4 aspects as we look at the first 4 X-Men in this wave, starting here with the green one. Incredible to put on Shadowcat since you're going to be zipping past Guard and Patrol and the Crisis Icon. This is going to let you get literally 3 more activations out of her, going from 6 threat to 12 threat with her. But for the other allies in this set, it's fine. I mean, you're probably not using Nightcrawler to take hits, so it doesn't matter too much what his hit points are, and Polaris does her thing when she comes into play. I think as the ally pool grows, all of these training cards are going to get more and more powerful. I really like the idea of this one. I think it's not there in this deck. Then we have 3 copies of Powerful Punch, a 2-cost attack and defense event. As a hero interrupt, when an enemy initiates an attack, deal 4 damage to that enemy. This one's a little weird. It's a defense event that doesn't mitigate damage in any way, but it is still a defense event, so Nerves of Steel is still going to help pay for it. It's still going to trigger flow like water, and if you're using it on a minion and it takes the minion out, it doesn't get to hit back. Then we get 3 copies of a 1-cost defense event, Mutant Protection, which you can only play if your identity has the X-Men trait. As an interrupt, when an enemy attacks, put an X-Men ally into play from your hand, exhaust it, and declare the defender of the attack. Or like Mutant Sacrifice. But if it does survive the attack, now you've gotten that ally into play without having to pay any kind of high cost or requirement on it, and it's still going to do whatever its response is, so long as the response doesn't require you to pay its cost. You could even use it to get an expensive ally out and then use Nightcrawler's ability to not make it take any damage. Then we get 2 copies of a new resource card, Defensive Energy, max 2 per deck. When you spend this to pay for a defense event, draw a card. So again, we're going to see one of these new resource cards in each of the 4 aspects over the next 4 heroes, and I think they're only okay, or they're maybe very good in the right hero. Somebody who wants to find a specific type of resource, because each of them give a wild resource. So Ironheart or Nova or Thor, I could go on. I'm not going to. Professor X is our first basic card. He's a 3-cost ally with 3 hit points, 0 attack, but 3 thwart. He also has the X-Men and Psionic traits. After he enters play, you can either confuse the villain, stun a minion, or ready an X-Men character. Discard him at the end of the round. So sort of similar to Nick Fury in that he is going to come into play, do a thing, and then peace out by the end of the round. Probably the best value is going to be readying your hero, but I mean, if you need it, a well-timed confuse or a stun on a particularly nasty minion can be life-saving. Game-saving. You're not in any danger. The X-Jet is next, a basic support with vehicle and X-Men traits. It costs 3 and you can exhaust it to generate a wild resource for an X-Men character. It's the X-Men Quinn Carrier. I don't even know what else to say about it. That's so good, and it's kind of hilarious that once again we only get 1 copy for the foreseeable future. Sorry, people who play with people. The Colossus and Shadowcat team-up card is next. Shadow and Steel, a 2-cost basic attack and defense event. As a hero interrupt when an enemy attacks, prevent all damage and deal 4 damage to the attacking enemy. So the flip side to it being funny that there's only 1 copy of the X-Jet is the team-up cards just aren't very good in solo. The timing almost never works out, although in this particular case, if you have Shadowcat out and you have boosted her hit points because of the training, you might be able to use this. I actually was able to use this to great success when I was trying out the pre-constructed deck. I'm just still probably not gonna use it much. The 2 tough status cards, the way he can use them, the way he can get them back, he feels as difficult to hurt as a massive Russian farmer made of organic steel should. He makes a ton of sense in protection. Perseverance, of course, is going to keep him loaded up with tough statuses. Bait and Switch, also reprinted in this deck with a tough status card on, is great. You make the villain attack you, take no damage, and you clear 4 threat off a scheme. Though do remember that allowing yourself to be attacked and blocking the damage with a tough does not count for cards like Unflappable or Hard to Ignore. Those require that you have defended. Just taking a hit and not taking damage is not defending. But his kit also has a bunch of physical resources in it. His resource generation is physical resources. So Drop Kick, Surprise Attack, our old buddy Yarnbjorn, they're all great aggression cards. The Hulk ally, who only wants to see those fist icons, really, really strong aggression hero. Plus those 14 printed hit points means he can take Unshakable and Limitless Stamina. Alright, that's all I've got for Colossus. If you like what I'm doing, let me know in the comments, or there is a link in the description to buy me a coffee. I promise I will not spend it on coffee. It will definitely be games and booze. If you don't like what I'm doing, well, where's yours, buddy? Huh? Where's your video on Colossus? Yeah, that's what I thought. Now get off my lawn. The Grouchy Nerd.